Thank you guys for joining us today for the industry update. As always, please keep your mics muted and use the chat feature only, and please make sure to address to everyone when you send the question out. That way Melissa and John can see the questions too. And with that, I will turn this over to John for a little introduction.
Thank you, Hope, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us again this week. We already have a really good attendance. I guess that's what unsubstantiated rumors will do, as you can see from Steph's graphic on the slides today. But anyway, we appreciate you being here. Hopefully we'll be able to clear up some of what's happening this week throughout the session. As always, this webinar is designed for the purposes of restaurants, hotels, travel and tourism partners, and other friends of PRLA. It's off the record. It's not a press event. So if you're with the press, please disconnect and reach out to Steph Otterson or any of us, and we'd be happy to entertain interviews or anything else we can do to help you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Melissa Bova to begin the update. Melissa?
Hi, everyone. I thought I'd break 150 today, to be honest. So hopefully I'm getting there. As John said, the text chain heard around the world that went around last night. We'll talk about that today. But first, we have to get through a few cleanup things, and then we'll get into what you're hearing, what I'm hearing, what I believe, and what I don't believe. So let's go right into federal. If you have not, and we're going to put links in the chat box, if you have not activated and sent a letter to your member of Congress, you are running late. So please, as it pertains to the next federal package, send that message to your federal congressperson, urging their support for a package. If we do not get this $908 billion, $950 billion, depends who you talk to, package through within the next week, there will not be another package until March, and we will not make it that long without federal assistance. So if you do anything while I'm talking here and there today, click on those call to actions from NRA and the American Hotel and Lodging Association and send a letter to your congressperson, because this $908 billion package is really our only hope to get you some financial assistance over the next few months. And I also think, to a certain extent, this package is also why we're not getting a lot of information in terms of mitigation efforts at the state level. So we are looking, as I mentioned, not much new information from when I talked to you all last week. We are looking at another round of PPP. There will be parameters to the second round of PPP. This will come as a shock to some of you, but some people drew down on the PPP back in March and April that maybe didn't need it. So they will be restricting the PPP specifically to industries and businesses that have been suffering related to COVID. We're hearing a 35% revenue loss could be the baseline to be eligible for that second round of PPP. We don't expect any other changes. Beyond what you can use it for. We expect the uses to all be the same, but there will be more parameters in place. I know I have many of you that might have multi-units. We are not quite sure if there's going to be a multi-unit restriction on this. There was not in the original PPP. Also, we're still working on, and I have to say, our friends on the tourism side of things are actively working on the 501c6 inclusion as well in this PPP. So that's what's included in this package that is the most important to you. I know there is the $120 billion Restaurants Act, and we support that and we want that, but that is not going to happen as part of this package. That is kind of, we're calling this our down payment in terms of this $908 billion, with the expectation and the assumption that we will get something like the Restaurants Act within the new Biden administration come January, February, and March of next year. But for right now, our number one focus is to get you some cash flow, and that would come via a second drawdown of the PPP. Other things that are included in this that we're hearing about and chatting about, there will be an inclusion of that deductibility issue we're expecting as it relates to the PPP. If you've talked to your accountants lately, your accountants have said to you that if you use your PPP on items that were deductible normally, they are not deductible now because you used government funds to pay for them. We don't think that makes sense. We believe if funds are used for something that was deductible before, it should especially be deductible now. So we do expect that to be addressed as part of this package. The Treasury could have addressed this on their own. They just declined to. So we're asking Congress to address it. The biggest thing included right now will be that's being thought about now, this will come as a shock, is that much needed liability protection. It is in the package right now, but our good friends from the trial lawyers are pushing back. But we are hopeful that that liability protection will be included, especially since our good governor decided to veto liability protection here in Pennsylvania. So that's part of it. Another part that you probably have heard about, because now that people are looking at the calendars, they're starting to think about this, is the fact that the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, that's that reimbursement you get for your employees that need to take time as it relates to COVID. It sunsets on December 31st of this year. So beginning on January 1, you would not be reimbursed for providing that leave. If you choose to continue to provide it, it would be out of pocket. So there are discussions within Congress right now of extending that, which for my friends in Allegheny County, that would be really helpful for you, because we'll get to, or in Pittsburgh, I'm sorry, not Allegheny County, my friends in the city of Pittsburgh, that would be helpful for you as it relates to a law that was passed yesterday. But the discussion at Capitol Hill is, do they extend it? The administration would like to just give everybody $300 and say, have a nice day, and not extend it. So that could be part of this package as well. Timeline is they hope to have something together by Friday of this week with passage on Monday. So as I said, you need to be reaching out to your congressperson now in terms of telling them that you can't wait till January, February, or March. They need to be passing this legislation immediately, and it's going to happen within the next 5 days. So please outreach on that end. Also, federal vaccines are moving along. You've probably saw it in the news. The United Kingdom started implementing vaccines yesterday. I think they gave 22,000 yesterday alone. We expect the FDA to be approving vaccines here in the United States. And we are also hearing that vaccines could be shipped, if approved, as early as next week, and to be given to hospitals and healthcare workers. And then there's a trickle down from there. We do not expect full vaccination or broad vaccination until probably late spring, summer of next year. But it certainly is, as we said all along, we will not have normalcy until there's a vaccine. And it does seem that there are multiple vaccines coming our way. So as those start to be distributed, that should reduce case counts, that should reduce the hospital overload that is hanging over our heads and seems to be the threat in terms of mitigation. And hopefully we will get back to normal sooner than later. So all of that's happening at the federal level as of right now. Next slide. So the legislature is in recess right now. They will not be returning to session this month, despite what you might have heard or what you might have read about special sessions, elections, all of that. Technically, they can't return and vote on legislation until they're sworn in January. There's a certification process that has to take place with the Department of State. So right now, they are technically, all of the new elected officials began and exist, re-elected officials began their, I guess, time of being in office effective on December 1st. So we're in that kind of gray area where co-sponsorship memos are being circulated and people are getting ready to be sworn in January, with legislation to start being passed later in the month in January. As a reminder, we are starting a new legislative session. So every bill that we passed, that we got partway through the process over the last 2 years, is dead, and they need to start from scratch. So for my long-term PRLA members, our minimum wage bill, our freezing of the overtime threshold, all of that is dead in essence and need to be reintroduced and started again through the legislative process. So that's what's happening right now. We will have thousands of bills introduced over the next couple of months. And of course, PRLA will be tracking and advocating for those that help our industry and defeating those bills that might not help our industry. Just as an FYI, you probably saw it on the news, the Capitol is once again closed to anybody that's not a legislator or staff. Most legislators are working remotely no matter what. There was a bit of a COVID outbreak within the State House, so they are keeping everybody remote as much as possible. I think every day we're hearing about a new legislator that has come down with COVID. So things are going to continue to be remote in terms of our advocacy efforts, in terms of legislative voting, which will just make it interesting over the next few months. But stay tuned, because once we finally get through COVID, I will go back to my happy place of just talking legislative stuff all of the time, and I'll be so much more cheerful, and we will never have to talk about COVID ever again. So let's all look forward to when that occurs. So like I said, not a lot happening in the state because they're not in session to do anything. Next slide. Here we are, Pittsburgh. See, Philadelphia does crazy things, and then sometimes Pittsburgh goes, hold my beer, and then they do something that's even like crazier than Philadelphia, and that's what they did yesterday. For those of you that are in the city of Pittsburgh, if you are in Allegheny County but not within the city limits of Pittsburgh, this does not impact you. But if you are within the city limits of Pittsburgh, yesterday, Pittsburgh City Council unanimously passed legislation that would require every business with more than 50 employees located within the city limits of Pittsburgh to provide COVID emergency paid leave to any employee that needs to take time because they've been diagnosed with COVID, because they have to quarantine because of COVID, or they have a family member that is diagnosed or needs to quarantine because of COVID. And they are eligible for up to 80 hours of this paid leave. It is not reimbursable. It comes out of the business pocket per se, and it is in addition to the existing Pittsburgh paid leave. We should be getting more information on this. We worked in partnership with the Pittsburgh Chamber, with some of our corporate partners that were based out in Pittsburgh to try and make the bill a little bit more manageable, but it did pass unanimously yesterday. So if you are in the city of Pittsburgh, it's if you have 50 employees during the length of the legislation, and the legislation goes until 4 weeks after the Pittsburgh emergency declaration ends. So let's say we hit June 30th and Peduto says, okay, COVID is gone, hurrah. This would end 4 weeks after that. So at the end of July, and then this would go away completely. So this is very specific to COVID. If you are a restaurant in the city of Pittsburgh or any business in the city of Pittsburgh, and you've had to unfortunately lay off employees because you have not been operating at capacity, let's say you have 35 employees right now, but in March, we get the numbers under control. We're back up to 50, 75, 100%, and you go back up to, let's say, 60 employees, this would trigger. So anytime you hit more than 50 employees within the city limits of Pittsburgh working for your business, this would trigger. So that's kind of what's happening out west. Like I said, we should get more information from the city, but that's the basis of that legislation. In Philadelphia, tomorrow will be legislation filed extending Philadelphia's emergency paid leave, slightly different because why be consistent with emergency paid leave? That is supposed to sunset at the end of this year, December 31st of 2020. The prime sponsor is filing an extension to December 31st of 2021 to extend it by another year. We are looking at the legislation. We do believe that even if Families First goes away, it will not require anybody who was covered by Families First previously to be covered, but we will be working with the prime sponsor to ensure that is the case. So we'll be working on that in Philadelphia. Also in Philadelphia, unanimously, a piece of legislation that forbids evictions of restaurants within the city of Philadelphia during the COVID crisis. So we heard from a lot of our members in Philadelphia who have landlords that might have been trying to move forward with evictions, which is kind of funny because who is going to rent a restaurant space in Philadelphia right now? But they're doing it anyway. So we were able to pass legislation that not only forbids evictions for property, but also will allow a catch-up period for businesses to catch up on maybe unpaid rent or rent that they couldn't pay for a certain period beyond. So it gives some wiggle room for our restaurants in the city of Philadelphia. And it does only apply to restaurants within the city of Philadelphia that have 3 locations or less within the city limits. So that's kind of where we are locally. They are going to be ending their sessions. Philadelphia's last day of session this year is tomorrow, and then they won't come back until the middle of January. So hopefully we can all catch our breath before we jump into another year of local legislation and mitigation. And with that, I'm going to chip it over to John to provide an overview of very properly of the statewide mitigation, and then I'll come in with my snark and fill in any blanks. Go ahead, John.
Thanks a lot, Melissa. Obviously, there's been a lot of rumors about a further mitigation on the restaurant industry or shutdown or something like that. We work hard to try not to spread rumors and only to confirm things that we know are true, and sometimes give opinions as to what's going to happen when we're asked that. But our opinions are not based on rumors. They're based on just the fact that we have a somewhat of a working knowledge with what the administration is doing. I will say that over the weekend, we were inundated with rumors that there was going to be some sort of severe mitigation on Monday for restaurants. And in fact, one of the rumors was attributed to me, which did not start with me. So if you get one of those, it quite likely didn't come from me. And we did engage with the administration during that time, and we're assured that there was no decisions made about mitigation. And in fact, we're asked for some opinions if there was going to be further mitigation, what would be potential options. Frankly, there's not a lot that can be done because Pennsylvania is very heavily mitigated in restaurants right now. The most important things, no congregating, which is the no seat, no service rule, face masking, social distancing are already in place, sanitizing of surfaces. The things that we focused on is whatever happens, and we've been focusing on this since July 15th, there should be plenty of notice because there is a lot that has to go into it. Number one is you've got to handle reservations that are on the books, food orders, things like that. And the short notice, like the 8.5-hour window on July 15th, is unacceptable. We've been beating that horse. We did so again over the weekend. And also that whatever is done, if there is something that is severe, it should not be done until after the holidays. There are particularly front of the house team members who are counting on the tips that they'll make over the next few weeks. In many cases, already spent them on Christmas gifts, and it would be an unusual burden to do so. There was a good back and forth exchange, nothing confirmed from that. I will say, lastly, on that front, and then I have a couple other quick comments, is no one really knows what's causing the spread. In fact, in the press conference on Monday, which I would describe as it's everyone's personal responsibility to beat the virus press conference that the governor and the secretary did, and frankly, I agree with them. I think we're a lot better off to activate 12 million people to try to stop the spread rather than several thousand businesses and try to make them the policemen. And they seem to focus on that on Monday. And I think it's also a recognition that the restaurant industry has been through a lot. The governor recognized that when asked questions about restaurants. He said, look, restaurant industry is struggling. We need to help the restaurant industry. So all of that was good. The secretary, when asked specifically if restaurants were the cause of the spread, she said, we don't know where the cases are coming from. We can't track the cases. There's too many cases. And then the final point that we made is, and this is something that appears to be the one truism of this whole catastrophe we've been facing this year, is that every state has different levels of mitigation, and yet it seems like they're all ending up in the same place. One of our officers who was visiting Georgia over the weekend commented that in Georgia, which arguably is one of the least mitigated states in the nation, they have half the cases of Pennsylvania right now with almost the same population. So it seems like no matter what we do, I mean, we all want to stop the spread. We don't want anybody to get sick. We certainly don't want anybody to die. But it seems that no matter what we do, it ends up in the same place anyway. And I think that's an argument to be made for let's continue the current status and try to get people to exercise personal responsibility. So we don't know what's going to happen this week, and we hear the same rumors that you hear, but we try not to substantiate those unless they're substantiated, which most of them are not. The good news is that I think we've reached the administration as far as the pain point of the restaurant industry goes. They're being very careful, it seems like, to try not to overly mitigate any more than they need to. And I hope they take our advice of whatever they might do, if they do anything, that they give adequate notice. I'll say one other thing, and then I want to comment on a question that came up last week, if I can, Melissa, just for a second. There's a lot of talk that the Northeast states governors will work together. If that happens, this is only an opinion. My opinion is that the Governor Wolf is going to be most likely to follow the leads of New York and New Jersey. I've been assured by my counterpart in New Jersey that that they will not go below where they are now, which is 25%. Governor Cuomo has announced that if things continue to be bad this week, that the upstate could go to, which is everything except New York City, could go to 25%, and that New York City will be closed, which Philadelphia essentially already is. So that's so you can take from that what you want. I take from that if there's states that are going to be followed, those might be the states that will be followed. We'll know a lot more over the next few days. They did say in the conference on Monday, if you missed the press conference, that depending on how things go this week, there could be further mitigation. There's a huge focus on personal responsibility, which, as I said, is where I think it should be. Last week, I believe it was Sean that mentioned that it would be good to compare Pennsylvania to Delaware. We did that this week. We got results from the survey that goes through October. And we found out a couple of things. I'll just make it very quick, and then I'll turn it back to you, Melissa, to finish up on the mitigation. One of the questions was about revenue. 89% of Pennsylvania restaurant operators said their total sales volume in October was lower than it was last year, not surprisingly. In Delaware, that was 79%. So it was considerably better. As far as business conditions deteriorating, 45% of Pennsylvania restaurant operators said unlikely they'll still be in business 6 months from now if there's no additional relief. Delaware said 37% in Delaware said that, which, by the way, is the same as the US average. Absent additional government assistance, one option is to close restaurants temporarily. 48% of Pennsylvania operators said they're considering that. Delaware was exactly the same. And lastly, talking about laying off employees, 65% of Pennsylvania operators expected to continue to lay off employees over the next 3 months. Delaware was 63%. 1% of the operators in Pennsylvania say they might increase staffing. 3% in Delaware said. So there is definitely a difference between Pennsylvania and Delaware that has less mitigation. And there's definitely a difference between Pennsylvania and the United States numbers. And I think Ben's already put the survey links up on the chat field if you want to look at the entire survey. So it's helpful information in trying to continue to express the plight of the industry and the need mostly for financial assistance and not for more draconian mitigation that doesn't seem to be stopping the spread at all. If there was any connection between it might be another thing, but there doesn't seem to be any connection. So with that, Melissa, I'll turn it back to you unless there's anything else you want me to talk about.
Yeah, just to give some background, because I know the last few days have been hard on everybody. We did start getting whispers on Sunday that they were talking about mitigation within the administration. I don't think any of us are surprised by that. But to be honest, I think we've all been talking for the last few weeks that something might be coming. I think the thought process was there might be an announcement on Monday. I think that it's good that there wasn't an announcement on Monday because it sounds like they're thinking about it. And as the governor said in his press conference on Monday, in between him you could have played a drinking game to how many times he said, we're looking at mitigation. Mitigation is coming. Stay tuned in a few days. But he did acknowledge that restaurants have been under attack this entire time and we're suffering more than anybody else. So we got through Monday. Yesterday, I like to call it the text chain heard around the world, which I started receiving yesterday around 5:30. That essentially somebody said, this is what the governor is going to announce on Wednesday in terms of mitigation. And I looked at it and I said, wow, that looks like somebody went to Philadelphia's mitigation and copied and pasted it and put it in a text chain. And I replied to a few people, some of you on this call, where I said I would like to think that the administration would be a bit more creative than copy and pasting Philadelphia. So as you can see, it was included in the chat box. Erie News was one of multiple news outlets that reported that the Philly mitigation was going to be applied across the state. They have since retracted that. The governor's office said, you copied and pasted Philadelphia. That's not where we're looking to go, but they didn't say they weren't looking to go somewhere. So if you received the text chain heard around the world, that is just a long list of about 15 items. That's Philadelphia. That doesn't mean Pennsylvania is going down that path. So please do not take that to heart. I know a lot of people were panicking about it, but there will not be an announcement today. We have heard that from the administration. I think there will be an announcement tomorrow. I think something is coming of some sort. We have heard from Allegheny County that Allegheny County was looking to do mitigation. They since publicly said they aren't going to because the state is. So I don't think we can take a sigh of relief at this point in time, but I do think that it does seem like the administration is taking their time to figure out the path that they want to go. And as soon as we get concrete information, we'll tell you. I know I've talked to many of you, I've texted many of you, and I always say, if I hear it from someone, I don't take it to the bank. I need to get confirmation from the administration, or I need to get confirmation from somebody that I know the information is correct. So if I tell you that and tell you, yes, I've heard that, but I haven't confirmed it, that means don't take it to the bank. And if you get it from one of your friends in the industry, definitely don't take it to the bank, because I think this week more than ever, we have just been bombarded with different scenarios. So I think, as John said, we need to be prepared for something. I certainly hope it is not a shutdown. I think that we can push back on that. I mentioned this before. I think that there is a desire to see if the federal package will go through from a number of states, not just Northeast, that if they do something more, they'd like there to be another round of PPP in place before they do anything. But this is not a scenario. If, God forbid, there is a shutdown or full mitigation of our industry specifically, as always, we will push back on that, and we will explore every resource and opportunity to do so. And we can promise you that. But like I said, please ignore for right now the text chain heard around the world in terms of people copying and pasting Philadelphia and sending it like it's what the governor is going to announce. Besides, we all know the governor's office doesn't release anything the night before. It gets leaked an hour or two ahead of time. So that's also how you know it probably wasn't true. And I think with that, we can go over webinars, upcoming webinars, and then I'll run through some questions.
Great, thank you, Melissa. We do have Melissa scheduled for next week, and we don't have any other webinars that we are putting on. We are going to wait until January for ourselves to be having additional webinars, but there is another one coming up this week that could be of interest of you using the data that you're requiring now internally and how to communicate out with your customers effectively. So please, if you don't have the time to sign up for it, you can at least get the recording of it. And then next in January, there's going to be a webinar, just it's a panel, and they're going to be talking about the overall dining attitudes and where the food behaviors are and where we are as an industry at this time and place. The next webinar is to talk about carryout PA. I know Ben did put that into the chat feature. Please be sure to go out there and get that updated so that the consumers in Pennsylvania know what you're offering and when you're open and what they can, where they can go to get dine indoors or for takeout. HARP, we did reopen the application this morning. We are still accepting applications. We're going to take the first 500 completed and submitted applications and then start working through that funding. Tito's graciously awarded us some more money, and we have been doing some really active fundraising across the state and have seen some wonderful contributions coming into this. So we are going to continue to try and offer more grants as the funds come in. But at this point, once we reach 500 apps today, we will close down, work through those applications, and if we can reopen again at the beginning of 2021. And then, as always, we are still doing training with limited capacity. So if you need to do any training, or if you don't feel comfortable in the class, you can do remote proctoring. You can find that on servesafe.com. And the dining commitment is still another great way to promote your business through their website. The national organization has been doing a lot of national campaigns for the restaurant industry, and it's a good website to have associated with your restaurant. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Melissa, for some questions. And you did get over 150, so we're at 171.
I blew my goal out of the water. I love it. There's a question. Have you heard the governor will be adding additional restrictions from December 14th to January 4th? That's, again, unsubstantiated. That is, I've heard so many things. I have heard December 14th to January 4th. I've heard that it starts on Saturday. I've heard it starts on Friday. So if there will be mitigation, we would certainly hope that there will be an end date. To be quite honest, in the past, there hasn't been an end date. So we need to keep an eye on that. So I cannot confirm. I haven't been able to confirm something, but that is one of the rumors that are being circulated. Again, unsubstantiated. It sounds like the new PPP will require businesses to have at least a 35% reduction in revenue versus last year. Is there any data about what the average revenue decline has been for the industry? That was actually covered a little bit in the survey that Ben posted here. I can tell you that on our national organization level, they have basically said initially they started at 50%. And then they got it down to 35. And the National Restaurant Association has done a pretty great job of saying, even a restaurant that's down 20%, when their margins are 5, maybe 6%, that's still risking going out of business. So we have seen, like I said, in some of the data we're seeing on average, it depends. With the cold, people are saying they're down 80. Some people are averaging down 30. But it is an average based on last year. So we will not know exactly what that entails, but the hope is that maybe that 35 can be lowered a little bit more to acknowledge that with our industry, with the margins we have, 35 is still a death sentence for the industry. John, I saw you unmuted. Did you want to provide some additional information?
I'm not exactly sure how you extrapolate this, but the numbers that in a letter that Sean Kennedy from the National Restaurant Association sent to the Big Four, Speaker Pelosi, leaders McCarthy, McConnell, and Schumer, said that 87% of full service restaurants, which includes independent chain and franchise, report an average of 36% drop in sales revenue. So how that necessarily compares with the 35% that you're talking about, I'm not sure, but that's what their most recent survey said. And I will say, as Melissa said, that the ask on the part of the National Restaurant Association is that number be reduced to 25%. Which we'll see what happens.
We have a question. Where do we stand on the Philly airport right of recall legislation? For those of you in Philadelphia, we discussed this a bit last week. That legislation is expected to pass tomorrow and will go to the mayor, and it's expected to get his signature. That legislation impacts any business located within the Philadelphia airport, any business located within the stadiums, and any hotel within the city limits of Philadelphia. So that is expected to pass. We'll go to the mayor, and he is expected to sign the bill. And we have lots of links. And then there's a thank you, John, to you for the follow-up with respect to comparison of nearby states, and frankly, for everything. So thank you, John, for that. Does Wolf have a press conference tomorrow? That's what I'm hearing, but he was supposed to have a press conference today. So, and just so you know, for all of you, you have so much time in the day, they don't announce the pressers until the morning of, and sometimes they don't announce until like 11 a.m. So we were told there might be one today. I was told there would not be one today, which means that there could be one tomorrow, or there could be one Friday. So if there is mitigation coming, I would expect an announcement to happen this week. Quite honestly, I think it's going to depend how the numbers go. They're still high, but if they trend down, things might change. So I can't say that there is a press conference tomorrow, but I'm hearing rumors that there might be. And then thank you, Allison, for the thank you. I think we can give it another minute. Wow, for like the threat of the rumor mill and everything that everyone's so worried about, I don't think we've ever finished a webinar this quickly.
This was
because we were so thorough in our updates.
You addressed all the questions before they asked them.
Yeah, and I mean, like John and I said, as soon as we know, we're gonna tell you. But I can't. I know everybody wants to know what my gut is, and I don't even trust my gut at this point, because I never thought that we would be above 12,000 cases on Saturday. So it's just hard, and we're seeing the repercussions of Thanksgiving. We know we're not the problem. As John already mentioned, Levine said that the spread is everywhere. So we know our industry shouldn't be targeted. That's going to be our focus, that we should not be the target of mitigation. And that's, I think, due to what we've all heard through the rumors, we don't know what questions to ask. And that's valid, Maggie. And honestly, if any of you all have my email, you have John's email, you have our cell phones, all of that. If you get word of something, shoot us a message. I'll tell you unsubstantiated, or I heard something similar. I know a few of you had, when you messaged me on Sunday, I said, I'm worried too. So, we will be upfront and honest, but I'm not going to confirm any rumors until I get substantiation from the administration on it.
Well, I think we are at the end of this webinar. Thank you, Melissa and John and
Stay
everybody.
safe, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Hope.
Everybody have
Thanks,
a good
Melissa.
week.
Thank you all for being here.
Bye-bye.